In 1993, the heartwarming film The Old Man and the Dog won awards, but its canine star had a dark secret. It was a beast fed on the flesh of its owner's murder victims. Cheng Peng, the son of a high-ranking official, turned his secluded courtyard into a slaughterhouse, killing 6 people over 7 years and burying their fragmented remains beneath his dog kennel. But it wasn't the bones that caught him. It was a single pager belonging to a missing businessman that finally exposed the monster hiding in plain sight. The story of how one of China's most gruesome serial killers was caught begins not with a body, but with silence. On January 9, 1995, a woman walked into the Yinchuan Public Security Bureau in Ningxia. She was frantic. Her husband, Zhang Ming, a vice manager at the Fengyuan Trading Company in the Yinchuan Development Zone, had vanished. According to his wife, Zhang Ming had left home on January 7th, claiming he had a dinner appointment to attend. Since that night, there had been absolute silence. No phone calls, no return. When she went to his office, his colleagues told her that Zhang hadn't been in contact with them either. He had simply disappeared off the face of the earth. Police accompanied the wife back to the couple's home to look for clues. There was no sign of a break-in. The door lock was intact, and the house hadn't been ransacked. However, when the wife checked their valuables, she noticed something specific was missing. Zhang Ming had possessed 3,000 yuan in treasury bills and 500 yuan in bonds. Those were gone. But more importantly, his pager, his BP machine, was missing. In 1995, a pager was a lifeline for a businessman. Zhang never went anywhere without it. Initially, detectives feared a kidnapping, but the family hadn't received any ransom demands. The only strange occurrence was a phone call the night after he vanished from an unknown man asking to settle a debt. But the caller hung up and never identified himself. The investigation team faced a difficult task. Zhang Ming's job involved frequent travel and social engagements. The list of potential suspects was enormous. However, they decided to try a simple, direct tactic. They sent a message to Zhang Ming's missing pager. The text read, "Zhang Ming, where are you? Please call back. Your family is looking for you." They didn't expect a reply. Or perhaps they expected Zhang himself to call. Instead, the phone rang almost immediately. It was a man's voice. He was calm, perhaps too calm. He told the police that Zhang Ming had gone to Lanzhou with a relative to travel to Yunnan for a drug deal. He claimed that before leaving, Zhang had borrowed money from him and left the pager and the bonds as collateral. The man on the phone identified himself. His name was Cheng Peng. This story didn't sit right with the investigators. They ran a background check on the missing man. Zhang Ming had 1.5 million yuan in his bank account, seed money for a cashmere business. He had no debts and absolutely no history of drug involvement. Why would a wealthy businessman suddenly run off to smuggle drugs, pawning a pager for petty cash? The police shifted their focus to the man on the phone, Cheng Peng. His file was far more interesting. Born in 1962, Cheng was the son of a deputy department-level official, a Guan Er Dai, or second-generation official. Despite his privileged background, he had a criminal record. In 1982, he had served 2 years in prison for theft. He was currently employed at the Forestry Research Institute, but was known to be a troublemaker. On January 16th, police brought Cheng Peng in for questioning. He stuck to his story. Zhang Ming was in Yunnan. When police asked about the bonds Cheng claimed to be holding as collateral, Cheng said they were at his house and arrogantly offered to take the officers there to get them. Cheng Peng lived in a dormitory house on the edge of the Forestry Research Institute's family compound. It was an isolated location. To the north lay a dense forest, to the east, open farmland. As the police cruiser pulled up, a cacophony of barking erupted. The yard was filled with dogs, over 20 of them. Cheng Peng turned to the officers, a smug look on his face, and boasted, "See that dog? It starred in the movie The Old Man and the Dog, directed by Xie Jin." But as they stepped into the courtyard, the atmosphere shifted from curiosity to chaos. Cheng Peng suddenly unlatched the main kennel gate. 20 aggressive dogs surged out, snarling and blocking the officers. In the confusion, Cheng bolted. He sprinted toward the woods behind the house. 2 officers gave chase, but the terrain was unfamiliar, and Cheng vanished into the trees. The remaining officers managed to herd the dogs back into the cages. They entered the house to search. What they found turned their stomachs. On the floor, the walls, and the legs of the wooden furniture, there were dark red spots. Blood. Some stains were fresh and bright red. Others had oxidized into black crusts. The pattern suggested high-velocity spatter, the kind caused by violent, repeated blows. The Criminal Investigation Squad was called in immediately. They brought police dogs to sweep the yard. The dogs went berserk. They focused on a patch of bare earth in the yard, digging frantically with their front paws. The officers took over with shovels. A few feet down, they hit something. It was a male corpse, not yet fully decomposed. It was Jiang Ming. They kept digging. In another section of the yard, beneath where the dogs slept and ate, they found more bones. But these were older, fragmented, and incomplete. Experienced forensic anthropologists identified them as human. Some of the bones bore distinct marks, cuts from a heavy blade, and the unmistakable gnaw marks of animals. The police realized with horror that Cheng Peng hadn't just been killing people. He had been dismembering them, cooking their flesh, and feeding them to his movie star dogs. By the end of the day, they had recovered remains corresponding to 5 different bodies. The timeline of death stretched back 5 years. As the manhunt for Cheng Peng began, the full scope of his crimes came to light. This was not a sudden snap of violence. It was a lifestyle of brutality that had gone unchecked for nearly a decade. Cheng Peng was born into a life of privilege in Yinchuan. His father was a high-ranking official, but Cheng was a volatile child. He was expelled from middle school for beating a teacher. His father used connections to get him a job at the Forestry Institute, hoping it would straighten him out. It didn't. Cheng spent his time drinking, fighting, and stealing, eventually landing in prison in 1982 for stealing a television. His resentment toward his father, who had refused to bail him out of prison, festered. After his release, he married a university graduate in 1988, but she worked away in the mountains, leaving him alone in his isolated courtyard with his dogs. That same year, his killing spree began. In August 1988, on a train from Lanzhou, Cheng met a woman named Hu. He charmed her, seduced her, and brought her back to his home while his wife was away. They spent the night. But the next morning, when Cheng told her to leave before his wife returned, Hu refused. She wanted to stay. Enraged by her defiance and the threat to his double life, Cheng grabbed a pipe wrench and struck her in the back of the head. He didn't stop until she was dead. This first murder set the pattern. He stripped her body, burned her clothes, and then used a machete to chop her remains into pieces. He boiled the flesh in a large pot and fed it to his dogs. He scrubbed the blood away and went to work as if nothing had happened. When no police came knocking, he realized he could get away with it. 2 years later, in 1990, Cheng recruited an accomplice, his wife's younger brother, Xiao Xiaodan, an impressionable 18-year-old who idolized Cheng. Together, they broke into a company warehouse and stole 8 hunting rifles and 1,000 rounds of ammunition. Cheng sawed off the barrels of 2 guns to make them concealable. To test their new weapons, they needed targets. In December 1990, a friend named Yu Dawei complained that a manager had withheld his deposit money. Cheng offered to help. He and Xiao hired a taxi driver, Mr. Yang, to drive them to find this manager. But the trip was a ruse. When the car stopped near a brick kiln, they decided to kill the driver, simply to eliminate a witness to their armed presence. Xiao hesitated, his gun misfiring. Cheng didn't. He directed Xiao to shoot again, executing the driver. They dismembered the body, boiled it, and the dogs ate again. Less than a month later, in January 1991, they killed another driver, Mr. Zhang, beating him and cutting off his head, purely for the thrill and to steal his car, which they later abandoned. Cheng's cruelty towards women was particularly chilling. In 1992, he met a woman named Lu in a dance hall. They had a casual relationship until she asked to borrow money for her boyfriend. Offended that she would ask him for money to support another man, Cheng invited her over and shot her dead. Her body was thrown to the dogs. Then, in 1993, the film crew for The Old Man and the Dog arrived. They were desperate for a dog that looked the part. They chose Cheng's favorite yellow dog. Cheng played the role of a loving dog owner on set, even working as a stunt double for the lead actor. He basked in the limelight, telling neighbors about his movie fame. Meanwhile, the very dog being petted by famous actors was digesting the remains of Cheng's victims. In 1994, Cheng began an affair with a married woman named Yu. She fell in love with him, buying him gold jewelry. But when she told him she wanted to have his child, Cheng saw her as a liability. Just like the others, he shot her, stole her gold, and buried her under the trees in his yard. He later claimed he cried while holding her corpse. A twisted moment of self-pity from a psychopath. Finally, there was Jiang Ming. Cheng didn't just kill him, he hunted him. Jiang Ming wanted to buy wool. Cheng lied, saying he had a supply, to lure Jiang to his home. He enlisted a friend, Li Sanwei, to drug Jiang's tea with sleeping pills. When Jiang passed out, Cheng strangled him. They stripped the body of the pager and keys, then buried him fresh, intending to feed him to the dogs later. They then looted Jiang's home, but only found small change, missing the fortune in the bank. It was this greed, using the stolen pager, that brought the police to Cheng's door. Back in January 1995, after fleeing his house, Cheng Peng was a man alone. The police issued a televised warrant, offering a 3,000 yuan reward. Cheng hid in a school for the deaf, shivering against the heating pipes, surviving on water and stolen bread. He saw his own face on wanted posters on telephone poles. He knew he had to move. Disguising himself in a dirty cotton coat purchased from a peasant, he tricked a cyclist into taking him across the Yellow River Bridge. He caught a bus to Inner Mongolia, reaching Otog Front Banner. It was the dead of winter. He moved from town to town, lying to restaurant owners about being robbed to get sympathy and food. He eventually found work in a coal mine and as an apprentice to an old doctor, trying to blend in. But his addiction to violence and power gnawed at him. He needed a gun. In March, he broke into a police station and a government office, hoping to steal weapons. He found only bullets and ID cards. He burned the IDs that didn't look like him and kept the ones that did. By April, fearing that workers from Ningxia might recognize him in Inner Mongolia, he moved again. He traveled to Xi'an, the capital of Shanxi province, to hide with a nephew who ran a foundry. It was April 13, 1995. Cheng walked into the foundry office. His nephew wasn't there, but a distant relative was. This relative had seen the police notices. As he poured tea for Cheng, he realized the man sitting across from him was the dog kennel killer. He quietly alerted the staff to call the police. Officers from the Caotan police station arrived, posing as lost customers. They entered the office, spotted Cheng, and tackled him before he could reach for his pocket. They found 52 rounds of ammunition on him, but no gun. The run was over. Cheng Peng confessed to everything. He detailed the 6 murders, the dismemberment, and the gruesome role of his dogs. His accomplice, Xiao Xiaodan, was captured in Shenzhen. On September 27, 1995, the Yinchuan Intermediate People's Court sentenced Cheng Peng and Xiao Xiaodan to death. They were executed immediately after. There was one final, grim task for the authorities. The 20 dogs in Cheng's yard, including the famous movie star, had been raised on human flesh. They were deemed too dangerous to live. All of them were taken out and shot, the final casualties of Cheng Peng's reign of terror.